everyone. Welcome to He's Not Wrong, and I am Chad D, your host, and I am so happy that you are here for our first episode. I first off just want to start out by saying thank you. Thank you to every single person who has shown enthusiasm, support, love, encouraging words, whatever it has been this past week since I announced that I was launching and doing this podcast. I just want you to know how deeply grateful I am that you have been along with me for this journey over the past 7 days. I, from the bottom of my heart, am very thankful for all the energy that you've been pouring into me. So with that being said, this show will be released every Sunday morning because I want it to be our ritual where we get to talk and drink coffee together and have a moment each weekend where we can just laugh and kind of get away from the troubles of life. Because if you're like me, you might be working 12 hours a day. We don't want to talk shop here. We want to laugh. We want a break. We want to kind of get away from it all. So that's what I really hope that I'm fostering with this space long term. Mood disclaimer. I don't know how I'm always going to show up to this podcast, right? I like today, great mood. You're catching me while I'm happy, but there might be times, okay, when I'm not so happy. So I don't know what version you're going to get of me. Some say I should probably go get that checked out, and I would say that you are wrong. There will be times when I say that you're wrong on this podcast. I won't be saying that about myself. I'll probably be saying that about some of y'all, but not in this moment. That's all I'll say on that. But the moral of the story is we have this time together every Sunday to have coffee and to come together and have a moment. So it also goes without saying that this is a podcast. I personally love podcasts for a multitude of reasons, right? I love the fact that it's just listening. I can, while doing dishes or laundry or cranking out documents while I work, I can have a podcast in my ear. It's very low energy. There's a low barrier of entry that is required of my energy to consume podcasts, but yet it has this amazing ability and power to transfer joy and connection via microphone and your the app on your phone and whichever you use to listen to podcasts. Like, I think that is amazing. So again, I like podcasts. I don't necessarily like making vlogs. It makes me highly uncomfortable that nowadays podcasts are shot in a vlog format. And I get it. It's for marketing and helps with reach and organic search and all whatever. So I get it. I'm not thrilled about it. I'm not happy about it. That's not my favorite aspect about this. I understand that I have to do it. I'm going to do it, but I don't want to do it. That's for damn sure. For a while, 12 years ago, that ship has sailed. I'm into podcasting, not vlogging. There is a difference, and I need that difference to be clear. So I say this because if you're watching on YouTube, I encourage you, let's go to Apple Podcasts. Let's go to Spotify. Let's just kind of go somewhere else so you don't have to watch me, because the fact that you can probably see me saying this sentence right now, if you're watching on YouTube, makes me highly uncomfortable. So that's all I'm going to say about that. And if you are watching on YouTube, I want you to meet a special guest. This is Gray. And for those listening, like I would prefer on one of our podcast platforms, I am holding my cat. His name's Gray, and if you haven't guessed yet, his name is Gray because he is indeed gray. Gray is my shadow. He is kind of like my support animal, and I'm his support human in some ways. We are attached at the damn hip, let me tell you. I got Gray a few years ago because I have another cat. He's over in a different room, but he's an orange cat. He's fat. I'm allowed to say that about him. He knows it about himself. He is currently on a diet, but it takes about a month for a cat to burn a pound, I think half a pound. So he's going to be on a diet for about the next 12 to 24 months. I'll let y'all know how that goes. But when I got Jack, I got him from Savannah, Georgia, or in Savannah, Georgia, I should say, when I was right before I was moving to Washington, D.C. And I thought it would be really smart to have a companion and not to make that move all by myself. I wanted to have some kind of thing going with me, I guess. But what I wasn't prepared for was how needy he was going to be. Um, so I brought him along. And so I decided that it might be time for him to, get a companion himself, to get a friend to take the neediness off of me onto another animal so I could like live life again. My level of guilt when leaving the house was equivalent to his level of neediness, and I couldn't do it anymore. So I decided I was going to get him a cat, and enter Gray. Gray ended up being 125 million times more needy than Jack ever was. And this is my life now. So, by extension, Gray is a piece of me. And so, therefore, he will be a part of this podcast, whether you're a cat person or not. And I do want to say, for all the complaining that I do about how needy Gray is and how attached he is to me, I am so grateful and I am so blessed because I know that's not everyone's situation when it comes to owning a cat. Not everyone can say that they have a cat that's obsessed with them. Sometimes people have cats that literally hate them, and I'm not in that situation. And so for that, I'm lucky, I'm blessed, I'm highly favored, and I'm thankful. So, as I said, I love podcasts. It's a major part of my life, and I'm making it a major part of what I do. I want to talk about the origin story about how we got started here with He's Not Wrong. The idea came to me about 7.5 years ago. It was around 2017, 2018. And I was constantly telling friends and family that were close to me, we'd get into really heated political arguments or debates, whatever. And I would always kind of end what I was saying with, well, she's not wrong, or, well, he's not wrong. And so there were multiple friends that I have for 7.5 years pitched the idea of He's Not Wrong to as a podcast, as a way for us to share our beliefs and our ideas in a way that where we can say it with our chest and say it with a surety that people listening would go, oh, she's not wrong, or oh, he's not wrong. And as you can tell, for 7.5 years, that podcast did not make it off of the ground. But I had a moment recently where I was with some people who were fairly close to me, and we were talking about the 2024 election, and they voted Republican their entire lives. Being conservative was very, very central to their identity and who they are as a person. And so for them to come to me and to say, hey, you know what? We don't really identify with the way that this party is going anymore, morally and ethically. Like, we wish someone would have told us like it was going to be this bad, or why didn't anyone tell us that this was going to be the way it turns out? And I thought in that moment, it was all in my head. I was thinking, well, like I told you. I did tell you. I've been telling you this for years. You just weren't listening. So instead of saying that, and instead of saying, I told you so, we had an honest conversation. We talked about history. We talked about politics. We talked about source documents in which policy that they aren't agreeing with right now is coming from. And so in that moment, I saw a need for He's Not Wrong to actually come to fruition. And since that moment, I have been working countless hours behind the scenes, making this set, learning about podcast audio editing and everything that goes into the production so I can make this an enjoyable experience for you and for me. When I was building all of this out and I had that realization and that conversation, a lot of it stemmed around the fact that dreams don't wait on anyone. And if I wasn't going to do it now, then it was never going to happen. So in that moment, He's Not Wrong was born, and here we are today. The thing about He's Not Wrong is I originally intended for it to be solely about politics, that was going to be the core focus of what we talked about um, on this podcast. And I realized that this podcast should be more than that. It should be a place where we can have the hard conversations and talk about Trump's policies and still make fun of each other for the hills that we're going to die on because we're not willing to admit that we're wrong. And those two things can exist in the same space. I'm convinced of it. And guess what? They will exist in the same space because I'm speaking it to existence. So, ground rule number one with He's Not Wrong. I'm not wrong. But no, seriously, I encourage debate. Debate's good. I love it. I love conversation. I love kind of getting into it with people and the end result being something that we can all take away some information or fact from. So with that being said, please send me a voice memo if there's anything that you hear on this podcast that you might disagree with, or it might trigger something in your brain. Let me know what it is. Send me a voice memo on Instagram to He's Not Wrong Podcast, or you can send me an email at he's not wrong pod at gmail.com. Either way is fine. And if you have any hot takes, any hill that you are willing to die on that you're not wrong about, send me over a voice memo. I'll feature it on the show. I want to feature voice memos every single week at the end of each episode. So you can send those in, like I said, on Instagram DMs, voice memo at He's Not Wrong Podcast. That's where you can find me. So my goal with this episode wasn't to dive deep into politics. I really wanted to lay the groundwork on where the idea for He's Not Wrong came from. I really wanted to lay out why it was an idea in my head and the importance of making it at this moment in time. So I wasn't too sure how deep I needed to go regarding politics in this episode, because the fact of the matter is we are going to talk politics on He's Not Wrong. That's who I am. That's what I do. I have a work history of politics that goes back all the way to around 2015. I was a political fundraiser. I worked on congressional campaigns. I ran for office myself. So it's not something any of us can run from when I'm involved in the conversation. But my promise to you, like I said, it won't be the sole focus of this podcast, but we will have guests and we will have co-hosts who come on who speak about politics, might be politically inclined within their private life or their professional life, and policies impact them and their line of work. And so they're going to want to talk about it. So to lay that introductory foundation into future episodes, into future conversations, I just wanted to lightly touch on politics in this first episode. I think it's important that we do that. I won't get too deep. I promise that this podcast will not be all politics, but we can't ignore reality. So in order to prepare for those future conversations and those future episodes and our future guests who will be on here, we need to kind of track where the policies are. We need to track where they're coming from, where their source, their origin, what is that? And that origin is indeed right now Project 2025. And I know people find that to be a scary word, but we need to like demystify it and we need to normalize it, because whether you agree with it or not, that's where our current executive orders and legislation is being sourced from. And so I want to talk about an important fact in stat, because it's not being talked about in the mainstream media right now. It's not being written about. As of the past 6.5, 7 weeks since Trump took his oath of office, 15% of his campaign promises have already been implemented. And these are campaign promises from his 2024 cycle. And when I say implemented, either put into action or in the process of being put into action, 15% of them in the first 6.5 weeks. And if that rate holds true, the rate at which things are being implemented, we can assume that 100% of his campaign promises will be put into action by mid-November of this year. no matter which side of the aisle you are on, that is an eyebrow raising stat. 100% of campaign promises at the current rate we are going will be implemented by mid-November of this year. Like I said, no matter what side of the aisle you agree with, that number is worth tracking. So I just want to lay that foundation so we can check in on it in future episodes. And some of those policies, because I'm not just going to make a claim that policies and legislation that are being put into action right now are being sourced from Project 2025. So I want to provide you with just a few examples along with a page number that you can find them in Project 2025. It's a PDF, it's free, you can find it online. And everything that I'm saying, please go back and look for yourself and read for yourself. Part of that conversation back in January that I had with people that were close to me, part of that conversation was about Project 2025. They felt lied to. Trump said he had no idea that Project 2025 was a thing. He had nothing to do with it. Whatever it was that he said, these people believed it. And so I feel like it's important that we talk about this, that we talk about how there are certain things that are happening and they can be traced directly to a page. And therefore, we can assume and we can plan on other pages being put into action by November. And the more we know, the more we can do, the more informed we can be, the more we can be there for each other. Because I have a feeling we're going to have to be there for each other coming up. And that's what this podcast is for. So let's get into it. So like I said, I'm just going to provide a few examples, not too many. For instance, Trump's enforcement of mass deportations and targeting sanctuary cities, that can be found on page 150. His birthright citizenship, that can all be found on page 178. His tax cuts and tax plans that we are starting to hear about, but we're going to hear more about in the coming months, that can all be found on page 53 and 54. The trade policy and tariffs that we're currently seeing right now in Mexico, China, Canada, all can be found on page 142. The withdrawing from international organizations like the World Health Organization, that can be found on page 60. So like I said, all of these policies can be traced back to a certain page in Project 2025. So if anyone tries to tell you that that thing is not to be looked at or it's not an issue, you tell them I sent you to go look at it. I gave you those page numbers because I'm not wrong. So that's kind of where we're at. So that's it. That's all we're going to talk about policy-wise. I told you. We just had to lay the foundation. We didn't get too deep. We are all good. We're still here. Let me know your thoughts. Please interact with me. Let me know. Okay, now that we're done with the political side of this, I need to be real with you guys. I did record one episode of this podcast already, and I hated it with a capital H. Hated it. And I was grappling with, do I post it or do I re-record? I think I did it. I think I did it. I now want to talk to you. I asked for viewer submissions for hot takes of what you're not wrong about, the hill that you're willing to die on because you will not admit that you're wrong. And our first submission comes from Matt.
Well, first of all, I've never been wrong about anything in my life. That's on period. Anyways, another thing I've never been wrong about is picking up on someone's vibe and knowing when they're trying to make a dig at me. You know, sometimes people say things, that shit is shady, you know it's shady, you know they know it's shady, and you turn to your friend and you're like, what they just fucking said was shady as hell. And your friend will be like, oh no, they didn't mean it like that. That's just how they are. No, bitch. They were being fucking rude, and I bet they do the same shit to you. So that's one thing.
So first off, thank you, Matt, for sending that in via Instagram at He's Not Wrong podcast. I have to agree. One thing that I pride myself on is my read of character for people. I always have had this innate ability and talent and skill that, like, I know the type of person you are within the first 30 seconds of meeting you. So I'm not going to say that I know if I like you within the first 30 seconds, but I know if you're a trustworthy person or not. So it goes without being said that definitely I agree in any situation. I'm picking up what you're putting down. If you're being shady or you're kind of crossing me, no, no, I agree. We're not wrong about that. I will also say it is so important to trust your gut and your instinct. At the end of the day, that is all that we can rely on. And for me, my gut, my instinct, it's never crossed me once. But you know what has crossed me? Those kind of people that you're referring to in your voice memo. So, with that being said, Matt, I appreciate you sending that voice memo in. And I have to be straight up honest with everyone. I knew Matt was going to send that in. So, thank you again. Matt has been an internet ride or die since I want to say 2017. Never met him. But you know what? I'd take a bullet for him, his boyfriend, and his dog anytime, any day. That's for damn sure. Uh, so he's a real one. I appreciate that. You're going to be hearing more from him throughout. He's not wrong coming up. Maybe we'll have him call in. Maybe we'll have him zoom in. But this isn't the last time you're going to hear from him. So thank you again, Matt, for sending that in. And we did it. We're here. We're at the end. We did one episode of He's Not Wrong. We're done. So I appreciate you for sticking around to the end. So if you liked this, I would please ask that you give me 5 stars, give it a review on Apple Podcast, follow on Spotify, subscribe on YouTube, follow me on Instagram, TikTok. All the information can be found in the link in the description. There's links in the bios on all the relevant platforms. You know what to do at this point. This isn't your first rodeo. You know where to find me. So help me out, follow along. Instagram, TikTok, at He's Not Wrong Podcast, email He's Not Wrong pod@gmail.com. New episodes drop every single Sunday morning. So grab your coffee, join me here. We're going to yap. Until next time, I'm Chad D, and I'm not wrong.